Hudson.
Let him speak to it first at the juncture.
At the adoption.
Gisborne, we had 400.
Yeah, first.
The motion is
Really?
still the same
on Maple.
intention. It's just adding a step of directing
The
staff,
epicenter of trick or treating.
a staff report. So into that.
Then that would just say, once it gets there, just
Okay, yeah. Okay, that sounds good.
take it. Get a second and you're off to the races.
Should we bring it up under 3 though as well?
No, I think
Nope.
we're okay. It's the same intention.
Okay.
I got a text from Councillor Elliott or Director Elliott that said she's too sick to come to the
Yeah,
meeting.
we didn't.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few people that are suffering here. Halloween takes a lot out of you. You get rid
We can start. Mine is just my computer.
And if you click on the
System has crashed, but I think we're ready
Well,
to.
okay.
We don't need it. I can not on my.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Planning Committee, the Cathet Regional Districts, already November 1st, 2023. We recognize we're working together with the Plowman First Nation. First order of business is approve the agenda. Have a mover. Brander. Gisborne. Any errors and omission of the agenda? All those in favor? See Sandy there? Thank you. Adoption of the minutes, October 4th, that the minutes of the planning committee held October 4th be adopted. Do I have a mover? Gisborne, Brander, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. I don't think we have any delegations or inquiries, no unfinished business, no correspondence, and no business arising from that. Our first report, I understand Ms. Rodden has some comments on 8.1, the Savary Island Slope Hazard Study. Ms. Rodden?
Through the chair, thank you. And good morning, directors. I'd like to make just a few opening comments to set the context for this study. The Savary Island Slope Hazard Study was completed for the Cathet Regional District by Tetra Tech Engineering. And the study responds to a recommended action in the 2022 Cathet Regional Coastal Flood Adaptation Strategy that called for an update to the 20-year-old Savary Island Dune and Shoreline Study with consideration for climate change and coastal flooding projections. And the study provides critical background information for the upcoming Savary Island Official Community Plan review and update process. The study also has important findings for other Cathet Regional District departments, including asset management, operations, and emergency preparedness. And map data from the study will be uploaded to the Cathet Regional District's Geographic Information System, and it'll enable staff to overlay the slope hazard data with other map data to support landscape analysis and the development of mapping for the Savary Island OCP. And the recommended slope hazard setbacks from the study will be explored with Savary Island property owners through the community engagement process next year, along with policy and regulatory options to reduce risks associated with coastal flooding and erosion, and also to increase the resiliency of coastal properties. So without further ado, I'll introduce Jeff Redwood, who will present the study findings to you and be able to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Redwood.
Good morning. I was having some technical difficulties earlier. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the intro, Laura. I'm new to this project. This project was initially completed by Shane Green, one of our senior geotechnical engineers here in Kelowna. Shane has moved on he's left Tetra Tech and moved on to work with the BC Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. So the report has been handed over to me to present to you. My understanding is, I've sent in the slides. I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to look at them, but that's what I'll be going through today, and then answering any questions or at the end. What I'll do now is I'll share my screen, show the presentation. So let me know if you can see that.
Yep, I can see that. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, so the study that was completed by Shane was took into consideration the slope hazards on the island. After reviewing it and also speaking with Shane about it as well, it was quite interesting. I've done geohazard studies all over the province myself, and this is quite a unique case. A small island that's technically in the ocean. It may not feel like it's the ocean with all the land around it, but it is subject to sea level rise, which, as we know, is projected as a consequence of climate change. So the scope of the study was to develop criteria for evaluating, the potential hazardous slopes on the island. Now, the slopes that were looked at were all along the shoreline, plus some slopes that were inland as well. And another aspect was to delineate potentially hazardous slopes and provide setback recommendations. Once again, this included setbacks at the toe of the slope, plus also from the crest, so above and below the slopes, again, along the shoreline and the interior of the island. So a map was prepared showing these areas. It's as part of the report summarizing the study. And my understanding was that there's some GIS line work. That was also a deliverable from this study that's been provided to the regional district. The slope hazard report was based on previous reports that were completed. One by Thurber in 2003 included the inland dunes and shoreline, and then two by Tetra Tech. Shane was involved with for the regional district. It included the mainland, and it also included the islands. So the material types that were found on Savary Island included materials that range from high to low potential for erosion. The ones that sit in the high category are ones that are from glaciation, from the time that glaciers started to melt about in the last 10,000 years, marine and aeolian deposits. Let's kind of give a brief overview of what they are. Marine deposits are material that's typically deposited in a low energy environment, such as an ocean or a lake. And they tend to be fine grained and underconsolidated, which means they haven't experienced any additional stress to squeeze them, push the particles closer together and remove any kind of void space being in the form of air or water. Aeolian deposits are on land. They are made up of typically fine to medium grained sand. They are windblown, and which means when you think of sand particle, things that haven't been weathered quite so much, they're angular in nature. If you look at it under a hand lens or a microscope, aeolian deposits tend to be more rounded because they've been blown around and have those asperites or angular surfaces have been weathered, eroded off. And again, they're under consolidated, so they haven't experienced any stress outside of just gravity, and which leads them to be potentially highly erodible. And then there's the glacial deposits that sit in the moderate category for erosion. Glacial marine and glacial fluvial, as the name indicates. They're both deposited with the influence of glaciers. Marine deposits, again, in a low energy environment on the edge of glaciers where it meets the ocean. Typically those are located. Again, they're typically finer grained. However, they can have larger material included in it due to the fact that it's from a glacier, and when glaciers advance, they drag material, they break it down. It starts off as rocks and breaks it down to various material sizes, ranging from gravel to clay. Glacial fluvials, once again, influenced by glaciers. It's in a fluvial environment, which means higher energy water environments such as streams or rivers. And again, it all is dependent on the sizes of the material from the glacier, so it can range greatly as well. It tends to be more coarse than say marine aeolian deposits, which would lead it to being less potential of erosion. Till material is basically the material that was ground down by the glacier. It's undergone additional stress other than gravity, so it's had kilometers thick glacier sitting on it, so it's more over consolidated, which allows it to be denser and have less potential for erosion. And then there's bedrock. Everyone's familiar with bedrock. It's hard. Usually where there's where parts of land are sticking out into the, say, ocean, that's being ocean's constantly eroding the land, the harder bedrock remains. And in terms of its potential for erosion, it's negligible for this study. Here's a figure that's taken from the report. It shows the superficial geology that's on the island. It's marked in the colors. Primarily there's the Aeolian here in the middle, so sand dunes. There was a bit found here as well, and then glacial fluvial deposits for the most part of the island, and then marine on the northwest and northeast ends, and there's a knob of bedrock here. That if anyone's been to the site or seen pictures, it's quite evident. The shore mapping, or the erosion potential along the shore, is also included in this map as well. Just as it's a combination of obviously the material type itself, but also the slopes, which we'll get into on the next slide. So the erosion potential for any of the slopes was adopted from a previous report, the Phase 2 Islands report done by Tetra Tech. Takes into consideration the type of material that the slope is made up of, and the material also the back slope material as well. Slope angle is important with the stability of any kind of slope, as well as the vegetation. So the upslope or near the crest or the upslope area, the amount of vegetation, the type of vegetation is important as well. Also, that was was included in the study that's more specific to the site was storm exposure. So there was some hydrotechnical and marine modeling of storms, what direction they come from, wave heights, their potential for erosion. So that was also factored in for the ranking for erosion potential. And then with the help of going to site, like having boots on the ground and actually seeing the slopes, there's some modifiers here in terms of the instability, obviously the size of the slope, and was also took into consideration from the Thurber study in 2003, the estimated rate of erosion, and also other landform types, so deltas. When you have erosion coming from the ocean, you can envision that coming towards you, but if you have a river that's going out into the ocean, this is both are energy. Well, one's coming at you, one's going away, and there is some energy dissipation of the waves that would be coming. So smaller river deltas. So the delta is a landform right when the river hits the ocean, it changes energy. Obviously, once it hits, there's lower energy because of the wave action from the ocean, and then materials depositing. So if you have a large river delta, it means you have larger energy, which reduces the ranking score. So a higher ranking score overall would lead to greater erosion, and a low ranking score, less potential for erosion. And this is the classification system. Taken the ranking score and thrown it into a class from rating from very low to high, and there were some areas that were not ranked. And this is just back to the first figure again. The erosion potential in the high category tends to be in the middle of the island, with some spots of moderate, based on on some material types that were found there on shore. But a significant portion is in the red category. Another aspect or scope of the study was determining safe areas from the slopes, and that included setbacks from the crest and setbacks from the toe. I'll go through the different types of slopes. In this study, there were slopes that consisted of rock, and then there were other slopes that were inland that weren't exposed to the coastal erosion, and then others on the coast.
Sorry, Mr.
Chair, I can't hear. There's a lot of background noise.
Yeah, there's some background noise there. Are you able to work on that for us?
Sorry about that.
Hard to hear. Thanks. If you can, any improvement would be good there. Thank you.
Maybe someone else.
Yeah, it sounds like there's somebody outside your office there that's affecting the transmission.
Yeah, there's a conversation happening out there. If I speak up, does that help?
Yeah, I think we're okay. And I don't know how much longer your presentation is. We've got the material in front of us, and we'd like to give people a chance for questions as well. So anything definitive for us here?
Okay, I will quickly go through the rest of the slides and then open it up for comments and questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so the three types of slopes: rock, inland, and coastal. And really was determining what the setbacks were from the crest of the slope and the toe. So for rock, it extends to shoreline. for the toe clearance and at the crest, 7.5 meters.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Red, we were going to stop you there. That background noise isn't working for some of us, and you know, we appreciate how difficult it is to have virtual meetings. If you could step out and ask them to stop, or we're going to stop and ask you some questions.
Okay.
Gonna mute him temporarily.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Sandy, I didn't see you there for a second.
Let them fight it out.
It's okay. Thanks, Jason.
We've muted you temporarily, so you'll just have to unmute your system, Mr. Redwood.
There we go.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so for the rock slopes, that was the most simple of the setbacks because there's less erosion potential. Inland slopes was basically 5 meters or 1 point times the slope height, whatever is greater for the setbacks. And coastal slopes included the change in the highest high water level tide, considering climate change and based on the year 2100. So what it would do is water level will come up and it would just push the slopes back. So there would be some erosion. So these setbacks were based on a distance of 15 meters of slope height. This is for the low erosion potential plus the offset, whichever was greater, and the toe clearance always extended to the shoreline. That's for the low potential for erosion. So a 15 meter setback or slope height, 15 meter or 1.5 times the slope height for moderate, and then for high it was double the slope height. So once again, the idea is greater potential for erosion, just a greater setback. And these slides here show the results of those setbacks. And I believe this information would have been sent to you as shapefiles in for GIS.
Yes, thank you. Great. Well, we will open it up. I have a couple of questions before we move to the receiving this and ending it. This area is in my area that I represent, and obviously the first order of business, maybe Ms. Rodden, thank you for your explanation that this will be included in all of our objectives that we have. Do I need to make a motion to include this in our planning, or is this a fait accompli there?
Through the chair, I don't think a motion is required.
Okay, great. Mr. Redwood, just a couple things. The technical definitions used for setbacks, is this following a standard, a geotechnical standard of some kind? I know you referenced the older reports.
Those were based, yeah, so those are based on for reports. I would say that there is no rule of thumb or standard for something like this. There would be what people have done in the past. So it would be, you know, referencing that. Just looking through the report here, if there's any specific.
Yeah, I tried to find any technical kind of reference.
Reference.
Was to see what these decisions, you know, when we're making decisions, are they based on a standard or is it sort of current best practice, that type of thing?
Yeah, it would be best practice.
Okay. And just finally, on a sort of related, I noticed that in your document, it's an 80-year design time frame. Is that relevant to the 2100 date that you've used for some of your calculations?
Yeah, so that would be between now and just roughly 80 years, be between now and 2100.
Okay, thank you.
So,
any other questions, Director Gisborne?
I got a very simple one. I'm hearing about the impacts of sea level rise, something very important. But also a lot of this material was as a result of glaciation. And I know that in some parts of our region, we get, what is it called? Post-glacial rebound. And I'm just wondering if any of those figures came into effect of the study. Because yeah, in some cases the sea level's going up, but then also the land is going up too. So I'm just wondering if that was part of the study or observed, or whether that data exists.
That's a good point. I asked that as well when I was like, well, we know that there is rebound. The majority of the rebound is already happened. However, it is still happening, and it will not outpace sea level rise. Sea level rise is happening. Even just 100 years, for it to raise a meter in 100 years is extremely quick in terms of geologic history and time frames. So that was a question that I had asked Shane as well. And the isostatic rebound was not factored into this. No.
Ms. Rodden?
Through the chair, I'd just like to acknowledge that in the process to develop the Cothat Regional Coastal Flood Adaptation Strategy, that rebound effect was considered. And if you look to your overview report from that study, there is discussion about what the regional projections are here, and it's far lower than what the province is recommending. The best practice is to consider 1 meter sea level rise by 2100, and so that's the best practice we're following. But our regional projections actually show up to 0.5 meter sea level rise. But we have not adopted that in our strategy because the province wants us to consider 1 meter.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I'm not suggesting the post-glacial rebound will outpace sea level rise. It's
any other
small
any
fraction.
questions? Great. Well, we have a recommendation here. Do I have a mover to receive?
I'd like to move something slightly different.
Okay.
Rather than receive, just replace receive with accept.
Okay, friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
Any, do we just ask for any
Well,
notes?
I mean, that motion has been moved now, so we would need a seconder.
Okay, we have a seconder.
Sure.
Okay, Brander, thank you. Any discussion on the matter? Dr. Gisborne?
Yeah, I support this study. I think it'll really help with understanding the OCP update that's going on. The reason I put forward the friendly amendment to accept rather than receive, my understanding is technically receive is just kind of automatic, and looking at some of the previous studies and staff reports, the motions have been to accept, and that just kind of allows us to, open it up for discussion a bit more. So it's not really any help. It doesn't help.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Yeah, it's carried. And as I mentioned before this meeting, it looks like there's a lot of business today in Area A. So we're going to carry on 8.2. We have a referral for Crown Land Tenure for Strata Moorage.
Chairman, I suggest you could dismiss Mr. Redwood. I think.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Redwood. If you're welcome to stay and listen in. It's up to you, but we'll let you go if you need to.
It'd be very interesting to sit in. However, I do have another meeting to attend.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot about you there.
No problem.
All right. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks. All right. Now we'll move on to we have a recommendation here for a Crown Land Tenure application. It's a little bit different that it's a Strata Moorage in near Sarah Point in Area A. Thank you, Director Brander, Director Gisborne. Any comments? Any others? Just from myself, this is an interesting property. I've been by it as it's sort of been changing over time. It used to be a log dump. Good report. Thank you to staff for that. It answers all the questions. Interesting to say that it's water access only, although all of these properties that say they're water access only do have roads that come down to them from Forest Service and other accesses. But other than that, I see no reason to deny this application. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving to 8.3, again in Area A, we have a referral for a subdivision on my road. So I think you've been able to look at the recommendation. Do I have a mover? Okay, Brander and Gisborne again, thank you. And any comments or questions from other directors? Director Gisborne.
Yeah, I know in the past, when there's a subdivision application and it doesn't meet the guidelines of the bylaw, sometimes I'll be a bit of a stickler. But usually I'm more concerned about kind of like overreaching the minimum size. This application, it doesn't meet the average size, but it does meet the requirement of the minimum size. So for that, I'm fine with it. And it's not really my neighborhood, but I believe the chair's neighborhood. So if he's okay with it, I'm okay.
Well, thank you for that. And good comment. I mean, we've all seen the report, and it does meet the minimum sizes and most of the other criteria, and really it fits into the neighborhood. We're adding to our capacity in London. It's on a well-serviced area, so I'm in favor of that. So any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? None opposed. Carried. Thank you. All right, we're on to new business. 9.1 public engagement for Area B OCP. Director Gisborne.
Yes. Now I know this motion on the agenda might seem a little familiar, and I had a good conversation with our manager of planning, and I think the problem with the motion on the agenda is that we're missing a step. And the motion on the agenda is to ask to go to public engagement for Area B OCP about floor area ratio and lot coverage. But I've put forward an alternate motion to ask for a staff report on floor area ratio and lot coverage ratio to determine how they might impact OCP, diversity, and housing. And I think the alternative motion might be a little bit easier for staff to work with. And then once we get that report, we can then use that as a tool for, even looking at Savary Islands OCP. So if that's my preamble, and if I get a seconder.
Yeah, I'm willing to support by seconding.
Okay. Let me just bring up my notes real quick.
I think you've emailed us as well just before the meeting. So do you have that?
Yeah, so the motion is displayed.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, housing is a very interesting issue that we have in our community. And the Local Government Act defines density as density of the use of the land or parcel, or the density of use of buildings or other structures. The Local Government Act doesn't really define whether density has to be number of dwelling units, or it doesn't even say whether density is defined as number of people. But the Local Government Act does require that the OCP has policies around density. So we can't just say, okay, you can do whatever you want. We have to have some density policies. Looking at other local governments and other official community plans, and being at some of these local government conventions, there's been some talk of, rather than having number of dwellings per hectare, using floor area ratio. And that is more common in urban settings. And they always like to use some different acronyms. Sometimes it's floor area ratio, sometimes it's, I think, floor space ratio. They all kind of mean the same things. When we get to a rural area, especially in our area where we don't have building permits, it can be a little bit challenging to determine what is the total floor area inside a structure when we don't really get into what's inside the structure. But because we're not seeing 12-story buildings, a building coverage might actually suit us better. And really, this policy or proposed policy can enable more flexibility, because I'll use a perfect example. Up on Nootka, there's a zoning bylaw, and that policy follows the OCP policy, and it states 1 dwelling per hectare. Now, if someone wants to have a motorhome or a fifth wheel, like a 20-foot rig, that's seen as 1 dwelling unit according to the zoning bylaw and our OCP policy. But a 5 or 10,000 square foot house is also seen as 1 dwelling. So the number of dwellings per unit area doesn't distinguish between the size of the structure. And when it comes to water and sewer use, those are based typically by Vancouver Coastal Health on the number of bedrooms, which is then equated to essentially the floor area ratio by your BC building code. So what this policy could be used to do, or policy change, is to enable a property owner to know their limits, build within it, and then if they want to have a couple of smaller dwellings, it would be allowed. Or if they want to have 1 large dwelling, that would be allowed. So this motion is to simply ask for the staff report on floor area ratio and lot coverage, and how that could be used to impact our OCP policies. And I think this motion is a little bit more palatable for all of us, because if we go to do an OCP public engagement and we're asking our staff to, talk to the public on floor area ratio and lot coverage, but we haven't gotten the report yet, then the public might ask questions and the staff will go, well, we don't know the answer to that. So I hope that this motion can be supported. And then when we get that report back, we can go the next step of either using it for Savary Islands OCP or even Area B's OCP, because I think it all comes down to the current policies don't distinguish between, a tiny home and a big house. And, talking to members of the community, they see a difference. So,
I saw Ms. Rodden's hand there, Ms. Rodden.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I could just make a friendly suggestion that I think that the motion that's been tabled would be clearer if it said that the committee recommend the board to direct staff to prepare a report on floor area ratio and lot coverage ratio to determine how they might impact OCP density and housing policies.
Okay.
I like that.
Yes, I think I see a lot of nodding. More clarity. Thank you for that suggestion.
That's better wording. I like that.
So are we going to have an amendment?
Okay, I'll put forward that amendment.
We'll let you catch up here. I think that was the.
So we would be striking out diversity in and inserting density and housing. And sorry, I will share my screen so that everybody can understand.
Read and understand.
So I'll move that, and I think you seconded.
So diversity was previously here, and it's a diversity in housing policy. So now we impact OCP density and housing. So this was the change amendment.
Okay.
I'll speak very quickly to this.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Rodden.
Oh, go ahead.
Through the chair, just housing and policies don't need to be capitalized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, Director Gisborne.
Yeah, it's a good amendment because, as I previously mentioned, the Local Government Act requires us to have density policies in our OCP. So I think the amendment actually makes the motion clear and makes sure that we're staying focused on what we're required to do by the province. So,
any other questions, comments? I'm in support of this as well, and I appreciate your thought process to actually get the information that people are going to need for public consultation. So thank you for that. Director McCormick.
Thanks. Chair, are we voting on the amendment right now or the
yes
main motion?
Yes.
The amendment.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor? I don't see any opposed, so the motion is carried. Now we go back to the main. Okay, back to the main motion. Yes, Director McCormick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a question of staff regarding how floor area ratio, lot coverage ratio, etc., are used currently in the planning process, and if this varies from what is typically done.
I think that'll be for Miss Rodden again.
Through the chair, well, lot coverage ratio is a concept that is applied in a number of the regional district zoning bylaws. Currently, that language isn't reflected in any of the OCPs. However, there may be merit to incorporating that, but I think staff needs to do some study so that we can develop a common understanding on what the tools are and what the possibilities are.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion? None opposed. Motion is carried. Thank you. And we're moving right into question period. Do we have anybody start with the media?
Thank you, Chair. I am online. I don't have any questions of you today. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. I don't think we have anybody else online anymore. Okay. No proposed in-camera session. Oh, we are adjourned. Thank you. See you in a while, Sandy.